The Love and Hip Hop Atlanta set is no stranger to turmoil. However, what happened lately has left even the most experienced cast members stunned. According to sources close to production, Rasheeda went off set in tears after Karlie Redd's unexpected private revelation. Fans are already buzzing, putting together hints from the most recent teaser and behind-the-scenes murmurs. But what did Karlie say that shook Rasheeda so much? Was it related to the long-running speculations about Kirk's hidden life? Or did Karlie disclose something really unexpected that took everyone off guard? The tension had been building for weeks, and just when fans thought things could calm down, this emotional bombshell landed. Currently in the midst of filming, those fortunate enough to be on stage described the mood as icy cold, utter quiet as Rasheeda stood up, her mic still connected, obviously wiping her face as she left the room. While some cast members attempted to console her, others remained still, uncertain of what to do next. It was no longer merely a scenario for the cameras. This was genuine. Stay tuned, because we're going to explain precisely what caused this remarkable event and why fans can't stop talking about it. The vibe on set that day was off once Rasheeda stepped in. Without cameras rolling, however, the whole production crew sensed it. The customary, easy, laughing, informal side discussions and short jokes amongst the Castile members were all lacking. Instead, there was simply silence, quiet expressions, quiet motions. Everyone seemed on edge, as if they knew something was coming but didn't want to say it out loud. Rasheeda arrived on set with her signature confident appearance and well-done hair. The outfit fit well, but if you looked closely, her eyes revealed a different tale. They were less dazzling than usual. Her grin was not as simple. She continued, gazing about, as if she was seeking for something or someone, wasn't sure what she wanted to see. The producers had built up a modest lounge area for this scenario. Nothing, just a circular table, 3 seats, and some gentle lighting. Karlie Redd and Bambi were already seated, waiting for Rasheeda. They both looked solemn, with their hands folded and their gaze down. It's a kind of body language that indicates this isn't about casual catch-ups or playful shade. Rasheeda sat down and gave a courteous welcome, but it was evident she was not in the mood for small conversation. Her voice was firm and controlled. "So, what's this all about?" she said after a little pause, her gaze fixed on Karlie. Karlie did not respond straight away. Instead, she looked at Bambi and then back at Rasheeda, her mouth hardening. It was not, like her, the typical jumbled energy. This was heavier and more purposeful. Bambi spoke out first. "Look, Rasheeda, we are not trying to ambush you or anything, but there is some things. You should be aware of the following information." Rasheeda's eyes narrowed slightly. "What type of stuff?" Again, there was a pause. The kind of pause in which everyone holds their breath. Even the team behind the cameras hardly moved. Finally, Karlie leaned forward slightly. Her speech was calm and softer than normal. "It is about Kirk." Those 3 words altered everything in the room. Rasheeda's whole face moved, her jaw tightened, and her eyes darkened slightly. "Just a bit. What about him?" she said, her tone bland. Karlie leaned down near her chair and took out a tiny folder. It wasn't very large or thick, just enough to carry a few pages of paper, but the weight seemed huge. I wasn't sure what I should say," Karlie replied gently. "But, with all that has happened, I can't keep this to myself any longer." She moved the folder across the table to mark the spot. The camera focused on Rasheeda's hands. She grabbed it up. Her finger remained firm, but her face was blank. That's the problem with true heroes. They don't always show up, screaming or sobbing. Sometimes there's only quiet. Too much stillness led to an opening. The folder moved slowly. The first page displayed a flight itinerary, Kirk's name travel, dates that did not correspond to what Rasheeda remembered. The second page displayed hotel bookings, again, Kirk's name, same dates, but different city. The third page, however, was really impactful. A fuzzy shot that seemed to be taken from a distance. Kirk stood next to a lady, not holding hands or kissing, but near enough that it did not seem to be a casual encounter. The camera captured everything. Rasheeda's face tightened. Her eyes blinked quicker, and her hands shook slightly as she flipped the page back and forth, staring again and again. Again, as if she had seen it incorrectly the first time. "Karlie?" said again, her tone level. "I did not want to be the one to convey this to you, but after all we'd gone through, I couldn't sit on it any longer." Bambi added gently, "Rasheeda, we're showing you this because we care. You deserve to know the truth." Rasheeda, however, did not hear it. Her gaze remained fixed on that folder. Her whole body seemed stiff, as if she was keeping herself together by sheer willpower. Finally, After what seemed like an eternity, she carefully closed the folder and placed it on the table. Her hands folded on top of it, fingers linked together firmly. When she talked, her tone was calm yet piercing. "How long have you been sitting on this, Karlie?" Karlie gulped hard. "A while." "Why now?" Rasheeda asked. Her voice cracked slightly. "Why? Are you bringing this to me now? In front of cameras?" Karlie glanced down. "Because I didn't know whether it was my place before. But now that everything was going on, I couldn't keep it back any longer." Rasheeda took a slow breath through her nose, closed her eyes for a brief while. She was attempting to calm herself down. Then she got up. Bambi stood up, but she did not move to stop her. Neither did Karlie. They merely watched Rasheeda softly scoot her chair back. She picked up the folder and held it in her palm as if it weighed 100 pounds. "I can't do this right now," Rasheeda said gently. "I really can't." Her voice cracked with the last syllable, and with that, she turned and walked away from the table. The cameras followed her as she strolled through the room, passing the production staff. Her microphone was still on, recording each breath. Rasheeda did not. She didn't say much, just a few small sniffles and her footsteps echoing across the lonely corridor. When she got to the door, she halted for a second and rapidly wiped her face with the back of her hand. Then she pushed it open and walked out. There was no huge spectacle or emotional farewell. Simply back at the table. Bambi and Karlie sat silently. Bambi let out a deep sigh and ran her fingers through her hair. "This isn't how I wanted to go today," she murmured. Karlie, but did not say anything. Her gaze fixed on the door where Rasheeda had just vanished. After a lengthy wait, she eventually said, "Maybe it was never going to be easy," Karlie said sadly. "At least now she knows." The team cut the cameras a few seconds later, but the weight in the room did not shift. Everyone moved slowly and softly. Nobody wanted to be the first to break the stillness. Rasheeda stood on the sidewalk, packet in hand. The phone buzzed in her pocket, most likely Kirk phoning, but she did not respond. She simply stood there, gazing up into the sky, blinking back tears that wouldn't stop no matter how hard she tried. And when word traveled among the cast and crew, everyone realized this wasn't simply another love and hip-hop moment. It was genuine. This was a deep one. And nothing would ever be the same again. Rasheeda stood outside the set, clutching the folder harder than she probably imagined. The air surrounding her became thicker with each passing second. There was no one camera, crew following her. Production had agreed, do not film beyond that door. However, there were still phones filming from a distance. Background crew, assistants, and even casual spectators captured shaky footage of her wiping her face with the back of her hand while standing transfixed, as if she didn't know whether to move or simply collapse right there. Within, everyone else continued to sit in startled silence. Karlie had not moved from her seat. Bambi, she had gently walked to the side, phone in hand, but she was not her normal self. For once, there were no whispered jokes or side remarks. Everyone understood that this moment was too serious to be treated as simply another episode scene. The production crew gathered silently in one corner, deciding whether they should check on Rasheeda and give her some space. Eventually, they decided to leave her alone for now. Meanwhile, news of what had happened was rapidly spreading around Atlanta. Bloggers who had been tipped off earlier in the day that a significant scene was being filmed began posting mysterious tweets and Instagram stories. No names were announced, but everyone who watched the program intently already had guesses. Fans began posting things like, "I bet this has something to do with Kirk and Rasheeda again." They weren't wrong. Rasheeda eventually stirred as the sun began to set. She took out her phone and made a single silent call. Not to Kirk and not to production. She called Spice. Spice responded very instantly. "Rasheeda, where are you?" Rasheeda remained silent for quite some time. Then her voice broke through the line, low and scratchy. "I need you to come and fetch me." Within 20 minutes, Spice arrived in her sedan. No cameras, no additional personnel. It's just her. When Rasheeda got into the passenger seat, she didn't say anything. She just gave Spice the folder and glanced out the window. Spice cautiously opened it, going over the pages one at a time. The hotel reservations, the airline receipts, the fuzzy picture. Spice's mouth constricted. "Damn." Rasheeda spoke with a bland tone. "You sure? Is this real?" Spice asked cautiously, not because she didn't believe Karlie, but because she understood how hazardous assumptions might be. Rasheeda shook her head slowly. "I don't know anymore." For a few seconds, none of them spoke. The only sound was the gentle hum of the Spice started the vehicle and drove them away from the set. Karlie eventually got out of her chair in the lounge. She was not the sort to stay motionless for long. Even now, As heavy as things felt, she couldn't sit back and let someone else determine what happened next. She strolled outdoors but did not go far. I just leaned against the side of the building, phone in hand. After a minute, Bambi joined her. "You all right?" Bambi said, her voice lower than normal. Karlie shrugged. "I do not know. I thought telling her would make me feel better, but it did not." Bambi nodded slowly. Karlie let out a dry chuckle, even though she knew she was doing the right thing. Maybe. The two of them stood there in quiet, watching as the last few crew workers packed away their gear and equipment. Production was formally stopped down for the night, and there will be no further shooting today. Not after that. And social media was heating up. Even without complete information, fans had picked up on the energy change. A few behind-the-scenes clips had emerged, none of which showed Rasheeda's face clearly, but enough to let people know something. Sirius had gone down, began trending. Hashtag LHATL and hashtag Pray4 RASHEDA both appeared within hours. One blogger wrote a strange piece titled "Karlie just flipped the entire season upside down. You're not ready." That same night, Kirk shared an Instagram story, which wasn't a video or a picture, just a dark screen with a single line of text. Sometimes, quiet is important. Fans swamped the post. Some pleaded with him to make a statement, while others pulled him. Kirk and Rasha both remained silent as the hours passed into the late night, accusing him viciously for years of alleged falsehoods that were suddenly coming to light. Spice and Rasheeda found up back at Spice's apartment, with no cameras or crew, just two pals relaxing in the living room. Spice softly handed Rasheeda and said, "Do you want to talk about it?" There was gentle music playing in the background, a glass of water. RASHED. "Ah," she shook her head. "Not yet." She sat there for a long time, files still on her lap, as if she couldn't let them go. She finally spoke. "Do you know what's crazy?" Rasheeda replied in a low voice. "This isn't even about the cheating anymore. It's about all these years. I thought I knew what was genuine, but Spice didn't. I don't know how many times I defended him, but she didn't interrupt her." Rasheeda said, her voice shaking slightly. "How many times have I told people it was different behind closed doors?" Spice moved closer, her tone stern but sympathetic. "You don't have to blame yourself for trusting somebody you love." Rasheeda laughed hollowly. The city lights sparkled outside, but everything within seemed darker and quieter. Back at production headquarters, the crew was already convening emergency meetings. They had film to evaluate, episodes to edit, and a cast to manage, all while keeping things from spiraling out of control. One producer spoke out in the midst of the discussion, and this isn't simply another battle we can cut down. This one is larger and more personal. The rest of the crew nodded in agreement. By the following morning, things had deteriorated even further. One of Kirk's former business associates posted an anonymous statement to a gossip blog, claiming Kirk, for years, they'd been conducting games under the guise of bogus business trips, but there was no actual evidence, just murmurs. But at this time, murmurs were plenty. Fans believed anything they wanted to think, and just now, most of them believed KL. Rasheeda eventually she made a choice and contacted production herself. She stated, "I'm ready to talk." Simply said, they promptly booked a confessional shot in private, with no cast. There was no glam crew or entourage when Rasheeda arrived. Just a producer and a single camera were there. She's dressed simply in trousers and a basic tee, with little makeup other than a little gloss. She sat calmly, took a big breath, and stared at the camera. "I don't know what y'all want me to say," she started, "because I'm still finding it out for myself." She did not weep on camera, did not raise her. She simply talked in the same calm, steady tone. It's one thing to strangers have something to say about your life, but when it's people close to you, people you trust, it hits more. Her voice trembled slightly. "I'm not perfect. I never pretended to be, but I've always kept it honest." She let the stillness last for a long time. "So now I have to find out what is genuine, right, and what's not." She sat back in her chair, folded her hands in her lap, and waited for the cameras to cut. However, Rasheeda's text indicated that the discussion was far from ended. Hit production, the tone on set altered again, as producers hurried to clear a private confessional. This time, there were no interruptions, no background staff, just Rasheeda, a camera operator, and the director. Rasheeda arrived swiftly, dressed in casual clothing, no heels, just shoes. Her hair was pushed back, and she seemed ready to say what needed to be said when the cameras began rolling. Her voice was firm, revealing little of the struggle behind. She took a long breath. "I've been silent for too long," she murmured gently. "I know you've all been waiting for me to respond, but I wanted to do it properly." She stopped, looking down at her hands lying in her lap. "This season, it's always been about displaying. The world knows who we are, our accomplishments, our families, and our problems, but no one has ever shown what occurs when trust is broken. Fans who watch later will see how quiet Karlie laid those papers out in front of me," Rasheeda said, her eyes darkening with pain. "I found airline receipts for travels he never informed me about, as well as hotel reservations under identities other than mine, and that picture of him with a lady I'd never met." She closed her eyes for a time, as if she could feel the betrayal scorching again. "I felt everything freeze," she said. There was a muffled sound as she sucked in a trembling breath. My heart flew to my throat, and I couldn't breathe for a moment. I went away from the stage because I needed space, not to avoid the reality, but to confront it alone. The camera recorded the little shake in her hands, and no one behind the scenes knew why I did it. They assumed I was being theatrical, but believe me, this was not theater, it was reality. She returned her gaze to the lens. I've spent years defending Kirk, telling people we were unbreakable, telling myself he loved me, respected me, and would never hurt me like that. But the folder said differently, and Rasheeda halted again, her voice catching. "I want people to understand that this is more than simply a guy coming out. It is about living with the secrets. I lost trust not just in him, but also in my own judgment." That statement hit like a blow, and fans would later remember it as the moment she quit playing the reality star and became a genuine person. "So, what happens next?" she inquired, her tone calm and rhetorical. "Do we pick up the pieces and pretend nothing occurred, or do we allow the reality determine our future steps?" Rasheeda let the stillness to endure, providing every spectator at home with opportunity to experience that moment with her. "I'm here to say I'm choosing myself now," she said, her voice firmer. With those comments, she leaned forward and gently placed an envelope toward the camera. Fans would subsequently discover what it was. This was her contrast to Karlie's folder, and it featured her own accumulated proof messages in which Kirk said that he loved another woman in a voicemail she discovered but never played. "I was also hanging on to this," she acknowledged. "It wasn't until Karlie showed me something that I understood I had my own receipts." Everyone on set realized that this event had changed everything. Reality TV Rasheeda didn't stand up right away once the camera cut. Confessional rooms were often used for such situations, but they seldom seemed so raw. She remained there for a time, eyes closed, as if mentally preparing herself for whatever happened next. Outside, the confessional production didn't quite know how to continue. They just caught there it wasn't simply a single plot thread anymore, as the strongest cast member admitted her own realities in unexpected ways. Later that evening, the mall staff delivered. Rasheeda returned to a group scenario, this time with Karlie and Mimi. The goal was to allow them to hash it out face to face. Yet everyone understood this wasn't just ordinary conversation. It would be an emotional reckoning, and Rasheeda was the first to enter the room. She didn't glance at Karlie. She just sat down, folded her hands, and gazed straight ahead. Karlie strolled in next, carrying a tiny suitcase, and her stance was calm and controlled. When she noticed Rasheeda, she hesitated and took a Mimi sat nervously between them, adjusting her microphone and clearing her voice. I know this is hard," she murmured softly, "but maybe it's time to hear each other out." Rasheeda nodded slightly. Eventually, she turned to face Karlie and stated, "This was genuine. I thought maybe you already knew," Karlie said, "but I understood you didn't, and I couldn't hide it from you." Rasheeda laughed bitterly. "You couldn't hide it from me, but Kirk could. He sat next to me with those falsehoods." Karlie shook her head. "That's not on me." The place felt. Mimi looked at both ladies, her face filled with grief, and whispered gently, "We all share the blame. We let things boil for too long. We pointed fingers and made excuses." Rasheeda leaned forward. Tears welled up again, but she brushed them away. "So what now?" she asked. "Should we just drag him back in and hope for the best?" Before Karlie could respond, the door opened. Kirk strolled in at midday, and everyone stopped. He gazed at Rasheeda, then at Karlie. No words, just that tense moment. Rasheeda stood up. "Almost, Kirk," she whispered, her voice quivering as she returned to her seat. Kirk gulped, his voice subdued. "I had to." The producer signaled for the cameras to roll, and whatever occurred next would be seen by millions. Watch them both. Their expressions are unreadable. Mimi sat between them, looking as if she hoped she might vanish. The camera focused on Kirk's face as he made a step toward Rasheeda. "I know I hurt you," he started, his voice harsh. "And I'm Sorry, more than you can imagine. Rasheeda's tears welled. She glanced at him, hurt and wrath on her face. Sorry, don't fix receipts, she said. Remove the falsehoods. Karlie's head jumped up as if she hadn't anticipated that line. Kirk's shoulders dropped for a second. No one talked, and Rasheeda's tears flowed freely. I gave you everything, she said. Perhaps that was my mistake. The Kirk attempted to grab for her hand, but she stepped back and said, I'm not sure. If I can do this, again, she said, her voice breaking. I'm not sure if there's anything more to mend. Karlie observed softly, her own with tears in her eyes. Karlie softly suggested that you both need time to decide if what you had is still worth keeping. Rasheeda looked to Karlie, a surprised expression on her face, and for a little moment, it seemed as if their relationship, their link, might be repaired. Rasheeda turned back to Kirk, her visage hardening. I need to find peace on my own, she muttered. And until I do, I can't keep pretending everything is okay. With that, she went, past Kirk and Karlie out of the room again, tears quietly flowing. The camera focused on Kirk for a long time as he collapsed into the sofa, head in hands. Karlie moved out with a cautious gesture and put a hand on his shoulder, and the scenario ended abruptly. With the cameras cutting, the set became quiet, and what spectators witnessed seemed like the end of a fairy tale. As the rumbling of that raw, unedited encounter circulated online, fans worldwide realized they had watched something that will forever define this season. Kirk sat heavily on the sofa, fingers entwined, and the set seemed more empty than it had before Rasheeda left. Karlie paused before putting her hand on his shoulder. Touch, not an embrace. He glanced up, eyes red, and nodded. The cameras remained steady, rolling, but no one spoke. Stillness was its own declaration. Outside, crew members exchanged worrisome glances. This season had always lived on suspense, but now it seemed genuine. Producers discussed rescheduling. The following group seemed to allow everyone time to digest. Karlie knelt down alongside Kirk, her voice gentle, low. This wasn't my plan. I believed revealing the truth would help. I had no idea it would damage so many people. Kirk's throat trembled as he swallowed hard. I never intended for it to come out like this, he said, his voice scratchy. But I can no longer lie, not even to myself. Karlie nodded and closed her eyes. As they chatted, people online speculated on what would happen next. She admitted that sometimes the truth is a knife, but it is preferable than live in a coffin of falsehoods. Live cams showed snatches of Karlie appearing exhausted yet determined. One tape showed Kirk wiping his face with the back of his hand, while another showed Karlie looking into space, sorrow engraved across her features from inside. Mimi seemed to get the action back on track, stepping forward with a kind grin. We're going to complete it. Let's do it openly, she said. No more secrets today. Kirk took a deep breath. You all deserve to hear from me, he began. So, here it is. He rose and walked to the middle of the room. Everyone watched as he dug into his pocket and took out his phone. I found something else, he added, holding it up. Messages I never erased. I thought I did. They've been old since before we were married. He slid the screen to Rasheeda before anybody else. The camera captured her hand, twitching. She brought the phone near to her face, strained to see the small text. A gasp escaped her lips. He was talking to someone else, even back then, she muttered. How did I never see this? Kirk's shoulders dropped, and tears flowed freely now. I was scared, he said. I'm scared of losing you. I am afraid of losing my image. I shut it out, but it never went gone. Rasheeda glanced up, her eyes red and sticky. So you let it fester, she said. You let it grow like a cancer. The room took a deep breath. Cry glanced away. Glancing at Bambi, she received a slight nod. Despite the tension, there was an underlying sense of camaraderie among them. I'm sorry, Kirk said gently. I can't alter the past, but I can show you that I have changed. I'm trying. Rasheeda took a nervous breath. She turned aside, wiping her eyes. Trying isn't enough, she explained. Not when you've built your life on lies once more. She walked away, leaving Kirk and Karlie alone there. Center space. Kirk sank to his knees and leaned against the couch. Karlie stood. She was behind him with her hand on his back. Mimi motioned to cut. The camera paused, but no one moved. The mood was very charged. Too raw. Later that night, key producers met privately. They examined the day's film. Kirk confessed Rasheeda broke down. Karlie's unwavering gaze. They argued whether to broadcast it as is or edit it down. Some believed it was the most engaging narrative line ever recorded. Others thought it was too intimate, too hurtful. Meanwhile, Rasheeda returned to her house. the folder still clasped in her grasp, she stepped into her living room, laying everything on the coffee table, the receipts, texts, hotel reservations. She sat down and went over each piece of evidence again, as if attempting to make sense of it all. She later emailed her closest pals outside the concert, seeking assistance. Some advised her to leave Kirk for good. Others encouraged caution, reminding her of the years they had spent together. But Rasheeda knew she was the only one who could make the choice. The next day, shooting continued with a smaller scene. Bambi, Spice, and Mimi gathered in a circle, discussing what they had observed. No Kirk or Rasheeda, only their emotions. Spick's voice quivered. "I've seen a lot, but I've never seen Rasheeda like this. She'd always been the rock, yet she seemed so little and forlorn." Bambi nodded. She wiped her own tears. "Karlie is correct. Sometimes the truth hurts deeper than